Alright, so welcome to Lesson 10. Going to make a new Java project, call it Lesson 10. Lesson 10 is all about switches. So instead of doing a ton of if-else statements, we're going to be doing switches. So basically, instead of doing all those long if-else statements, we're going to be using a switch. So in the source, create a new class, and we're going to call this calculator. Okay, so I'm going to hit my public static void main button, and in the top, we're going to put in our comment block, so author, weight, it's lesson 10, and description creates a calculator based on user input. Okay, so I'm going to go down here and format a little bit. Now the program we're going to be working with is really on page 45 of your book, but I'm going to be making some small changes to it. So if you need another reference, or if you can see that a little better than you can see this video, you can use that as a resource. Alright, so I typed it in, so it's make your arithmetic selection from the choices below. So basically we are creating a menu for the user. So what we'll need to do within our program is put in some ways for the user to interact. So the first way the user interacts is scanner. So we're going to name our scanner calc input. So it's going to be our calculator input equals new scanner system.in. Hopefully you've kind of mastered this line and the line that's necessary after it. Remember? So one of those choices is going to be entered, 1, 2, 3, or 4. So put in int, and then we'll call it choice equals calc input dot next int. So hopefully you're kind of getting more comfortable with those two lines. Those are really important lines. You need both of them to input anything. Alright, so before we go any further, I'm going to actually comment out these last two lines that we just put in, just to see what my program looks like when I run it. So let me go ahead and run my program. Okay, so make your arithmetic selection from the choices below, addition, subtraction, division. Okay, so that does kind of run together for me. So this is just like a formatting thing, and then when I enter my choice, I'm going to type in like right next to that. So I'm going to go back up into my code, and I'm going to put a space after my colon. I'm going to delete all these spaces in the front I put in there. I do kind of like the spaces in front of the 1, 2, 3, and 4. So let's take a look at it again. Okay, so make your arithmetic selection. That looks a little bit better. I like that. Most of the point of running programs in the real world, essentially, is not even necessarily to make it just so that it operates, but you also want your user to be happy with how the product looks in the end. So taking a time to kind of check your code, make sure it runs not only cleanly, but it's visually attractive for your user to enjoy. And just for gigs, I'm going to actually put in a blank line before my your choice. So at the end of that division line, then a nice little escape sequence, your /n. Let's take another look at it. That looks a whole lot nicer, doesn't it? Just separates everything out. Alright, so after we have our user make a choice as to what it's going to do, we need to give it some choices to make. So we're going to once again ask our user for some help. So I'm going to come up and I'm going to actually copy one of these lines. And notice what I'm doing here. I am leaving some spaces within my code. I mean, it doesn't really slow down the computer and it doesn't really make the program run faster, but as a person, I tend to see things a little bit better if they're chunked up by kind of natural choices. So I have these chunks up here with my little options for my menu. I have my your choice on its own line, and I have my scanner getting the integer for my menu up here. And then I'm going to leave another space while I ask the user to enter me some numbers. So come down here, and I'm actually, because I've noticed, your choice is going to print on the same line. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start this line with a new line escape sequence. So don't forget to enter in that /n, and I'm going to tell my user to enter your first number. In the book, I do call it an operand because anything that you calculate is an operand. And operands can be anything, including a double. So we're going to use our double, and I'm going to call this n1 equals calc input dot next double. Then I'm going to do the same thing, so I'm going to copy this whole sequence. And since it's really similar, I'm going to put in the same kind of chunk of code here. Instead of first, it's going to be second. And since we did print line, we don't really need the new line. I'm going to call this N2 instead. And just in case maybe I like walk away or something and I don't remember exactly what I was doing, I'm going to put some comments in this actual code to tell me what I'm doing. So I think this part is okay, but I'm going to press and enter. So in line 16, I'm going to make a comment and say present menu of calculator options. Okay. And then in line 24, I'm going to make a comment and I'm going to say retrieve user's choice for menu option. And then in line 28, I'm going to say retrieve user's choice for numbers to manipulate with calculator. So that way, if someone else is reading my code, they know where certain things are happening. And this will become more and more handy to you the longer our codes become. All right, so go to the end of your code, and we're going to start our switch statement. So go on down to line 34, and we're going to say switch, and this is going to be our bare bones. So just like when we have if, we need to have open and close brackets underneath the statement, and there needs to be an argument within the switch. So the switch, this is where you're going to find the number that's entered here. So what we're looking for here, we said that the switch is being initiated by an integer called choice right here. You see that? So switches can be initiated by two things. It can be initiated by an integer or a character. P.S. That question is totally going to be on your test. So I would rewind if you missed it. We'll talk about character more at the end of this lesson, but an integer, you know. Now within our switch statement, we're going to have things called cases. So our first case, if you look at what we're asking our user for, the first thing they can enter will be a 1. So we're going to call it case 1. Put a colon at the end, and I'm going to make a remark over here, and this is addition, just for myself, just so that I know that whenever I enter anything in or a 1 in, it's addition. So we are going to have 4 different cases. Actually, I'm going to tab it over one more just so I know what's underneath my switch statement. So I'm going to copy that line. I'm going to come down 2 and paste, and it's not addition anymore. Now our second one is subtraction. Our third case multiplication, and our fourth case is division. All right, so the switch with the cases underneath of it is kind of our skeleton of a switch statement. So now we need to actually go into our cases and tell it what to do. So our first one is we're going to actually print out system out print line. We're going to put in number 1, and then we're going to actually tell it, so we're actually printing this full statement. So number 1 plus number 2 equals. Now, if I punch in just n1 plus n2, some of you have already discovered this is not going to work for you, because what happens when you put in just n1 plus n2 when you're dealing with other strings is it treats these like strings and it concatenates them instead of actually adding them. So if you're trying to add something in a print statement, you need to put an open parenthesis in the front, an open parenthesis or a closed parenthesis at the end. Make sure that your string concatenates. So then end it with a semicolon. You may also notice that we have an error over here. So scroll on up to the top, make sure that you have import java.util.asterisk and import java.io.asterisk up at the top. And scroll back down, let's take a look. What did we forget? We forgot our plus sign. Don't forget your plus signs. That will be very handy to you to remember to put those in. Okay, so now we have our plus sign, so it's a little bit happier. I'm also going to come down to line 39. I'm going to do something called a break. So this forces my program to break. So if case 1 operates, it's going to perform this calculation, and then my program is going to stop running. Otherwise, it's going to keep running my program forever and ever and ever, amen. So what I want you to do is copy lines 38 and 39, place them into case 2, but instead of addition, we're going to be subtracting. So remember to put your minus and n1 minus n2. We're going to come down to case 3, and we're going to put in times. Then come on down to division, put in our divide sign, and we are good to go. Now, what if you have some jokester coming up to your program, you're telling them very kindly in the very first line to make a selection below, and what if they type in, heaven forbid, a 5? So, you can also come in the same line as case and put in a default. So the default is going to be if someone types in anything other than what they're supposed to. So let's give them a little bit of help. So print line, you jokester, please enter only 1, 2, 3, or 4. Don't forget to put a semicolon at the end. All right, so I just made my console window a little bit bigger. So I'm going to save it, and then I'm going to run my program. So my choice, I'm going to do 2. So I'm going to enter my first number, and I'm going to pick 2. My second number, I'm going to pick 3. 2 minus 3 is -1. That's correct. All right, so you can kind of play with this a little bit and test out different entries.